So our next panel is on how India has made condensed milk its own. It's going to be helmed by Tanushree Bhaumik. And to those who don't know Tanushree, Tanushree is the co-founder of Indian Culinary Agenda. She's a researcher and food writer and has contributed to the Bloomsbury Handbook of Indian Cuisine, presented at the prestigious Oxford Food Symposium in 2022, and frequently writes for newspapers. She researches on ancient and medieval Indian food and turns them into curated culinary experiences via folktales. When not researching, Tanushree works with the World Bank. Tanushree?
Thank you, Ruth. And thank you for that Freudian slip of saying that I work for the Gold Bank. We are infamously known as capitalists, so yes, I accept it. I think we had some very moving and, a very technical discussion to begin the day with. But the next panel is on something that's sweeter. I'll definitely not say lighter. This is a panel where we talk about how India made condensed milk its own. And why is it important? Because condensed milk, as we understand it, what we have seen it growing up, is a product very different from how it came to India. And in that lies a story of not just India's journey, India's journey of dairy. It is also a journey of India's milk sufficiency, and also a very critical story of how a product had to pivot around a government policy and how India became milk sufficient. Before I introduce more about the subject, it is my absolute privilege to have with me on stage today. Can I please invite Ruchi Shrivastava, who is still hard at work with her presentation. Ruchi is, I think Ruchi has never gotten over her introduction as the producer of the first 4 seasons of MasterChef India. But that is important for you to know, because that is what I think brought her to start her own production house called the Greed Goddess Media. Ruchi is a very dear friend, so I feel very proud when I tell you that, being a socially conscious filmmaker and an avid traveler, her first documentary film, The Man Who Dwarfed the Mountain, is born out of her concern for the environment. And her deep admiration and respect for environmentalist Chandi Prasad Bhatt. The documentary was honored with the National Award 2016 for Best Environmental Film, along with other awards at the International Adventure Film Festival, Himalayan Awards, Eco Film Festival, Borno, Czech Republic. And the list is pretty long. We will spend at least 1/3 of the panel if I have to give complete introduction of Ruchi Shrivastava. Besides being a pleasure, it's an absolute honor to sit by your side. Our second panelist, may I call upon stage to join us, Chef Dhawal Ajmera. The moment I introduce him, you will know why is he so critical to the panel today. Chef Ajmera is the executive chef with Nestle Professional. And before this, he has worked with ITC for 20 years, and he is as a pre-opening specialist. Chef, before we get into the panel, what is a pre-opening specialist? I don't think most of us know that.
So basically, opening a hotel, opening a hotel is in itself is a big task, isn't it? And especially a hotel like ITC, which is very particular on the kind of food we want, the kind of processes that we want to set, and how the hotel food will look like, feel like for a long time. It was a very important task, so I took it up as a challenge and opened about 14 hotels for ITC in various brands, the brand called Story, Mementos, and Welcome Hotels. So that is what I did before joining Nestle.
Great. Thank you, Chef. So why are we talking of condensed milk in a today that we're talking of dairy? The way we'll structure this panel, and let me lay it down, is we want it to be informal chat. We want it to be like a fireside chat where we are talking to each other. We want this to be interactive, and we would try and leave as much time possible. We'll probably talk for about 20 minutes and leave about 15 minutes for a question and answer. So having said that, India has always been, we have a long tradition of milk and also drinking milk, right? So why was the need of getting something like condensed milk into India? Condensed milk in India has a pretty, yes, condensed milk in India, the history of condensed milk in India is closely related to the history of colonialism in India. Along with the colonial officers who came to India, came two things. One of that was their distrust of Indian dairy, amongst, I guess, many other distrusts about Indian processes and food and the land that they brought with themselves. They wanted to make things better. So condensed milk first came into India as a staple of the sailors and the military, because they wanted a shelf-stable milk for their officers and the sailors to be able to drink. Somewhere around the late 18th century to the early 19th century, one thing changed about colonial settlements in India. What was predominantly male, they started getting their families into the country. As the Mem Sahibs, as they were called, came in, they wanted drinking milk for the children. But the same distrust of Indian dairy and milking processes, which were majorly domestic in nature, which was done in small households, did not, they could not trust the drinking milk that they were getting. So from a military and a ship staple, that is when we see that condensed milk entered the home pantry in India through the colonial Mem Sahibs. And so we actually, and this is something Ruchi and I were talking about, that how when you go through early, mid-18th to mid-19th to early, late 19th century cookbooks, it became quite a fashion for Mem Sahibs who came into the, into India then, into the subcontinent. They would write recipe books and leave back very elaborate notes for, women who would come after them. And a lot of these got published later on by publishers based in England, and later also some by Indian-based publishers. And in those we find extensive use of condensed milk, and also condensed milk being prescribed as a food for sick children. For infant. So there are quotes like, "A good mistress will remember the breadwinner requires blood-forming nourishment, and the children whose constitutions are being built up day by day, sickly or health, according to the food given them. And bear in mind the fact that in India, especially half the comfort of life depends on clean, wholesome, digestible food." And this is something that they write on why they promote the use of condensed milk. So starting from there, as we gain independence, and a few years, and in 2 decades of it, India launches Operation Flood, where we want to become a milk sufficient country. That is when major condensed milk brands who were in India were forced to pivot. A government policy forces them to pivot because they could no longer be a shelf-stable drinking milk. Because safe, hygienic drinking milk was no longer the issue that the Indian consumer was looking at. We had gone into milk booths in a city like Delhi. Very early on, the Delhi milk scheme booths came into place. Later on, we saw as Mother Dairy was set up by NDDB. So the Indian consumer's way of drinking milk and what was aspirational in terms of hygienic and safe had changed. And that forced an entire, vertical of product to pivot. So from being a drinking milk, condensed milk was forced to change itself into a dessert additive. And at this point, I will stop, and I'd like to bring in Ruchi, who will take us through a small journey of how this pivot happens and, where it stands today. Ruchi, over to you.
Thank you, Tanu. Can I change your presentation? Yeah, you can please add. So how Tanu said, condensed milk had a very, very amazing journey in strange ways, that how it also started, that some confectioner in France wanted to figure out a way to airtight the products. Now everything was getting spoiled, so he decided to try the canning technique which mothers were doing at home anyway. So he just commercialized it and started airtighting all the ingredients, and milk was one of it. But he miserably failed, because when he condensed only milk, the taste was awful. So there was another English guy who decided to add sugar and patent it, but he never probably started the factory. And so the European story of condensed milk just stopped there and then. And then 30 years forward in 1861, Gail Borden, he was a serial entrepreneur. He figured out a way that if I condensed milk, I will be able to create a larger fortune. And he witnessed in a ship when he was coming from London, he saw livestock dying, and the kids who consumed that livestock's milk, children died on the ship. So that gave him an impetus to really figure out what to do. And he added sugar, condensed the milk, and after 2 failed factories, it did amazingly well. In fact, I was reading about American historian, jokingly said that condensed milk won us a war. That everywhere condensed milk was supplied, army was happy, things were going smooth, and by the time these guys went back home, they all recommended condensed milk back to women. So that was the story where condensed milk started. And then back in Europe, 2 American brothers decided to open another factory, Page Brothers. And they tied up, and simultaneously 2 years later, Henry Nestle also opened a condensed milk factory. And they paired up together, and what we have today, the biggest milk MNC in the world is Nestle. And because of their placement in Europe, they were able to supply to all the colonies. And that's how gradually, through ship, through army men, condensed milk landed up in India. And not half the country, but there are enough people, I think, who are obsessed with condensed milk. Now, coming back to where Tanu left, there is the way, how marketing at times could change the strategy and change the placement of products so smartly. So there probably would be some smart brand managers sitting in Nestle at some point of time post Operation Flood. Initially, the first strategy which they had for early 1900 was infant product. Condensed milk should be drunk by children, to family, everything, because it's safe milk, safe dairy. Cut to 1970s, 60s, 70s, they had to figure out a way to still have the condensed milk in the kitchens, and now gradually money was coming in. People didn't have that kind of money, but still one could little bit try to afford a 400 ml condensed milk tin. So and women, there were families still with joint family system. Women were still making goodies at home. So why not make it labor free? The laborious job of women in the kitchen, constantly bunoing, constantly mulling, doing things. They said, you use condensed milk, time will be half of it. And there came the entire essence where they pushed it really hard with recipes. Bolna aasan hai, but the moment you give the recipe, you're showing a woman ki ye 4-step ki recipe mein aap nariyal laddu bana rahe ho. Suddenly nariyal laddu, which was part of largely coastal region, became a pan-India delicacy. I have seen nariyal laddu everywhere being made now. I don't see a region where they don't say, ma'am, nariyal laddu nahi banate. So is the easy way of Kalakand was very specific to a sweetmeat shop. Kalakand curtsy at homes were being made because of condensed milk. So that strategy went on till 90s, and it was pretty much pushed through advertisers, through print, and a lot of community programs which were done at a ground level, which today we see a lot of talks happening in big IIMs or management schools at how to push the product. This is one of the greatest example where they, at that level where you didn't have too many distributors, they really went on ground. They caught up kitty parties, they figured out clubs, they figured out every way where there were women communities, and did demonstrations and give products in free samples initially, and people started picking up and making all the mithas possible. That was the second strategy which they really twisted on desserts absolutely. Third came the eggless dessert thing. Now, India is big with eggless. I come from Bombay, there half the Gujarat is there. Then you have Gujarat next to it. Eggless, as a basic sense, is huge. Earlier, I would always deny it. But then when I look at data, it really shows that eggless bakery is a huge thing with even home bakers. So, condensed milk somehow really helped in creating eggless European goodies. So there were cakes, you would put it on waffles, you could do million things, you use it on pastry, and that's how the eggless part is what they really caught. And this is something Amul did it when in 1990 they launched Mithai Maid. Now we had Milkmaid, which was a product which was hero for 80-90 years in the country, and then so look at the branding strategy of a brand where they decided the name itself, Mithai Maid, Mithai ka dost. कुछ करना ही नहीं है उन्होंने straight, they went ahead, they said मिठाई मेड बनाओ, ladies will pick up, they'll make mithais at home, And then simultaneously, they added a lot of recipes, the recipes booklets which came, like these kind of chota recipes. 4-step recipe. Who will not get lured? If somebody has to make, they'll look at 4-step recipe and make it. So this happened till our digital boom happened. The entire push of, and then came this entire phase where satellite television became really big, and you had tons of money. Advertisers were ready to throw on television to promote their product. So we had something called an advertisers funded programming, where the entire production cost was taken care by the advertiser. They would tell you what to do. This is the money, you make the show for us. That helped in really pushing products like condensed milk in everyday kitchen, in regular kitchen, making it cool. Secondly was the branded content and integrated content, where basically if you are showing 3 recipes, 2 recipes will have mithai made, yeah, 1 recipe will have mithai made or Milkmaid or any other product. Largely, since we are talking about condensed milk, it was condensed milk. So, and this used to happen a lot during season time. One is the big, for example, a MasterChef happened. They really pushed hard on mithai made, because the pantry would have, for meetha, the only option they would give is mithai made. So as a contestant you're using, you had to use mithai made. There was no option for anything else. Then chefs would push it through the recipe shows, where they would put one recipe where the chef is telling you that how good this product is, which had so much of sugar, but yes, it did its job. People started buying it. Now, how do you lure the current generation? So these are influencers. Now, if you look at the calendar year, be it Eid, be it Diwali, be it Holi, be it Durga Puja, every festival where there is a reason, or Christmas, wherever there is a reason to make a lot of home goodies, where women today also, while working, or men who are interested, and they will ensure there is some homemade goodies. There are bulks and bulks. Internet is flooded with recipes from Milkmaid, Mithai Maid, now Milky Mist. These are 3 products. Milky Mist is fairly new, but Mithai Maid and Milkmaid. These are the products which are pushed in the market. They give it to influencers. Influencers make the recipes. So from the booklet, we have gone to the digital influencers era. And now what I see with the new younger influencers, they are trying to do the Vietnamese coffee thing. So how to really engage the college crowd, make a Vietnamese coffee. So this is how a product from Operation Flood to now, the 3 different very prominent strategies which were done, and done very silently. They didn't speak about it. You will not find it anywhere. It's just the pure observation of that, how things very smartly changed. And they still ensure that if it was 80% market share, it has only gone higher, it has not cut down.
Thank you, Ruchi. We spoke quite a bit about, and we'll come back to it, especially the strategy of, how women got to use condensed milk and when the product pivoted. But before that, chef, to you, I'm sure condensed milk has also had its journey in commercial kitchens, right?
Yeah,
what was that? How do chefs look at condensed milk?
So I have a take on what she said. Milkmaid or condensed milk, sorry, as a product, is a very versatile product. So marketing strategies worked very, very well, but I think at the bottom of it, at the heart of it, the product itself is a very versatile product from the chef's point of view, or for the women who were cooking at home, or many other approaches that were applied by the marketeers, or But I think as a base, we must, believe that it was a very, very fantastic product. From infant milk product to milk substitute for the tea and coffee, to Indian desserts, to Western desserts, eggless baking, and now so much more. So that we will come to now. Coming to the commercial kitchen, right? And I was talking to someone outside that chefs have a very, especially in the world after the TV became very important and the chefs became, so to say, celebrities, right? It wasn't the case when we joined the industry, but 2004, 5, chefs started becoming, very influential in a way. So from then onwards, chefs have actually become more important than using it in the kitchen. Using it in their own kitchen professionally was one aspect, and obviously that was there forever. Chefs were using Milkmaid, condensed milk forever. They were using it for eggless baking when premixes were not there. They were being used, of course, in the kitchens for Indian sweets. Halwai started using. The first guy who started using Milkmaid, condensed milk, I'm sorry, I keep going back to it.
No, this just shows, for everybody who's done their management knows, right? The brand recall, like how every Indian says good night, and we can never say a mosquito repellent. I think it's just that.
When Milkmaid came, people used to call Amul ka Milk.
Amul ka milk.
Amul ka Milkmaid.
Milkmaid, whatever they did with the name, but it was still known as
Amul ka Milkmaid.
So it is still called Amul ka Milkmaid in a lot of chefs ka indent sheets. Anyway, so this condensed milk, chefs started using it long back. Halwais were the first ones who started using in the kitchens. Kheer. Nariyal ka laddu was a strategy. Kheer was a natural thing. Halwais used in kheer, firni, and all those Indian, because उनको पता है हलवाई हमारे में सबसे कामचोर breed है. ठीक है. So they don't want to work, and they want to work the least. And this is a secret I'm giving out. So they started using Milkmaid, condensed milk in a way that, फटाफट हो रहा है, काम फटाफट हो रहा है. And it had a very nutty, caramelly taste, which was again, that Maillard reaction of sugar that you already get. Otherwise, you create it in your pan, in your कढ़ाई. वो Maillard reaction आपको naturally मिल रहा है. वो आप मिठाई में डाल रहे हो, मिठाई हलवाई यूज कर रहा है, अच्छा लग रहा है. So that is how it started in the kitchens. Then obviously eggless baking, because eggless baking it started of course with the dry cake, tea cakes, pastries, muffins. And then the marketing bit, and I think that's a great strategy. Now marketing, they're smart people, marketeers, of course, right? They did a very smart strategy in they realized, and I'm hearing that condensed milk from last 30-35 years is its end of life cycle. I'm hearing it from 30 years. मैं जब industry join किया तभी भी लोग बोल रहे थे अब खत्म है, condensed milk is over, अब उसका कोई use ही नहीं है. But that's not happening, because there is reinvention continuously happening about it. पहले Indian sweets, kheer, नारियल के लड्डू, and then two-way strategy of pushing it in the industry and in the house. So घर में जो लेडी खाना बना रही है आप उसको इन्फ्लुएंस कर रहे हो, होटल में शेफ को इन्फ्लुएंस कर रहे हो, आप उसको सिखा रहे हो, उसकी रेसिपी सिखा रहे हो. Then it went to eggless baking. Then realize अरे eggless baking के लिए तो milk condensed milk चाहिए नहीं, because premixes हैं, इतने premix है, and the quality is so good now you don't need it. So the next plan was to do it in a way where it actually replaces a lot of expensive Indian Western desserts became so big in India. The cheesecake, the pastries with the frostings, dulce de leche. I mean, how can we miss that? Dulce de leche was never heard of. Who thought? I don't know who. There must be some great chef. डब्बा डाल दिया उसने पानी में, 3 घंटा उबाला, dulce de leche.
The CT without the pressure cooker.
And this, pressure cooker so without the CT.
Can I add to it?
Yeah.
So no, please, without the mic. I feel otherwise my voice echoes.
Recording.
Sorry. So when Dolce was across internet at some point of time when we were doing MasterChef, and they asked us that contestants have been reading about it, so they want to make this. Kya kar sakte? So I went and I checked. There was evaporated milk wasn't available. So I said, okay, figure out some export guy who somebody would be exporting to the hotels evaporated milk. So they came back with the cost. They said, this is the cost. I said, we can't pay this. So one of the back-end chef, he said, ma'am, let me do a trial. He takes the tin, puts a little water in the pressure cooker, removes the CT. He said, 5 minute ka pressure dete hain, evaporated milk ho jayega. But meetha evaporated milk. The difference between condensed milk and evaporated milk is no sugar, but and even 60% of water is removed, but just the higher level of caramelization. That's the only difference largely. And they made desi evaporated milk, and then we pushed it very hard across recipes. I said, ye evaporated milk hai, use this ghar pe with the tin.
But one of the other things I learned in using it is that there's not a better glaze on your breads than condensed milk. The egg yolk or anything else doesn't come near. So the best glazes that you see on your brioche is probably your brush of condensed milk. But since you mentioned MasterChef, and let's come to this thing here. We all know that the term MasterChef, what it refers to, we're talking of women or men who are cooking at home but has an expertise. They're not formally trained as chef, but they call master chef. When we read the history of condensed milk in India, I think that's the and here if I have to take the brand name, Milkmaid was the first one who kind of introduced the concept of master chefs and involving them in a branding or in the marketing strategy in India. You had, the series of interventions that they did with through clubs, colonial clubs, organizations like Lions Club, where they would get women together, did cooking competitions. A lot of these recipes from there would get into the recipe books that Nestle was publishing. And that's
the postal recipe competition.
The postal recipe competition. Also the recipe behind the label of the tin itself, with the name of the recipe developer. And I think we see the first instance of, women especially, getting the recognition as chefs by a commercial brand. And that was through undeniably through Condensed Milk. I have before I hand it over to, ask you the next question, I have a personal story here. I think I was in 8th standard when I actually participated in a Milkmaid recipe contest in Sibsagar in Assam. And I won that contest. And I had a lot of women who came up to me and said, who made that for you? It couldn't have been you. And I still remember that it was a raw papaya halwa. And it worked. But in a place like Northeast, they have had campaigns as outrageous as, including elephants to promote the product, and that's a part of their journey. But coming to it, in your, and using MasterChef as a reference, and you also did a show on mithai, right? And if you forget the brand that you were using, how conversant were, or what was the ease that they already had, the contestants, with a product like, Condensed Milk?
A lot at ease, because everyone, by the time these television shows really started, it was early 2000, everyone had used condensed milk enough at home, and if not used, they've eaten it. Most of them had stories of licking condensed milk in their mother's kitchen and hiding it. So the only difficult part, I think, which most of them was they really tried to make Western desserts somehow. That was something common among all contestants from across shows where we worked, where we had condensed milk as a product for them, that they didn't want to do it because they said, ye to bahut banaya hai. This we have made enough. And somewhere I think it comes from back of the head also that if we make European desserts, judges will pay more attention, and probably they feel, see, we always compare that our technique is not better, but their technique is better. So they wanted to use European desserts and condensed milk and create desserts out of it. But somehow people were very, very at ease. And so are chefs. When we are making any kind of a television show with chefs also, in fact, not a bad thing, but in back-end kitchen, every show has a back-end kitchen, which is a small makeshift kitchen where we do half prep of whatever we are showing in front. Any dessert, if it was going wrong, we always had condensed milk. We said condensed milk ko paka ke dal do, theek ho jayega. That was okay, because also in a television show, you're not really tasting the food after a point. It's just the beautiful food you're showing. So anything which went wrong by chance, for example, if we needed kada hua something, kada hua halwa ban raha hai, nahi ban paya, and shooting time is always very limited. You have to shoot within those hours. I would just tell the back chef, add condensed milk, bhoon do, theek ho jayega. Condensed milk came in like...
In fact, in the kitchens, in the hotels, if you see, what you see in front versus, in fact, what we make is so much more. We made sandwiches with condensed milk. And we have, sorry to say, but हमने खाया है, हमने cheese और condensed milk sandwich खाया है grill करके, and it's brilliant. Believe me, it's very, very nice. You should try. हमने डोसा भी खाया है condensed milk के साथ. हमने बहुत कुछ खाया है. As a chef,
I need to put a disclaimer here.
Yeah, I'm
now.
sorry. Yeah, it's something that chefs keep doing. So, yeah, chefs do weirdest things when no one is seeing. So, हाँ, बहुत कुछ करते हैं, हम बहुत खराब खाते हैं, but that's how it is, right? Because all good food you already eaten. So, you keep trying. So, sandwiches with condensed milk, dosa, so much more that happens in the kitchen with condensed milk, because it's always there. It's always there. It's always a tin of condensed milk is there, and what do you do?
I think you answered what I was coming to you with in terms of ease of, like you said, for master chefs, and you just answered it. And as Preethadi was nodding, I think about European desserts, I think that was also the first instance where something like a lemon bar or a lemon square came to India, right? At the back of the condensed milk tin on that label is when lemon squares came to India. Or even when a coconut, we realized that there is something called a coconut snowball, which is very much like a coconut laddu, you know. And also the coconut snowball ultimately became the coconut laddu that everybody was having. At this point, I'll open for questions. We have 10 minutes, and then I will not eat more into our lunchtime. There. Okay. Do not ask about the dosa.
Yeah, I won't
Okay, we are talking about dairy. What about for the non-dairy people? What do you how do you give a solution in this regards?
Non-dairy milk, condensed milk. So see, these days there are a lot of solutions. You know, there is a coconut milk that becomes like a thick, creamy milk. In fact, now if you see a lot of pastries are all non-dairy. It's very. I mean, I don't like it as a chef, but all the frosting that we eating is non-dairy. So non-dairy is big in pastry industry. Everywhere, of course, now.
Are you planning to launch any product?
On a dairy front? On a non-dairy front, no. But yeah, dairy frosting maybe yes, very, very soon. But again, if it is about condensed milk, there are a lot of substitutes with non-dairy now that are possible. Whether it is, you know, coconut milk substitute which are in the powder form, which becomes like a creamy textured milk, and almond milk substitutes. You know, there is a lot of things that are happening. In fact, now people are making yogurts with it, curds with it, cheeses with it. Cashew nut is a next big substitute. Chickpea is a next big substitute. So I think there's a lot of work that's happening on that front, especially now that, you know, veganism is becoming big. Yeah.
Probably a condensed milk or even an egg white to stabilize. The next big thing is chickpea, in fact. The chickpea, yeah, exactly. The chickpea water is the...
Chickpea protein is a...
the aquafaba.
Chickpea protein is a very... Yeah.
Any other question? I can see Vinayak there, and I see another hand. So we'll take two more.
Yes. I'm somewhat outsider because I am a doctor by profession. But however, there are some observations and some feelings I want to share with you. Exactly 40 years back, when Dhawal was just 1 year old, one day his mother told me, "आप जाके Milkmaid लेके आओ." So I brought Milkmaid, and she prepared coconut laddu with that, and we still remember it was a wonderful dish, and Dhawal almost consumed half of the laddus. At that time, I never knew that Dhawal will be there with Milkmaid once upon a time in future. So it's a very proud moment for us, and thank you for allowing us to attend this lecture, because we are all outsiders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think that's about food, right? No one's really an outsider. I mean, everyone's an insider on the table, because even if you're not working on it, food's something that consumes, and everyone's got a responsibility when it comes to food. Vinayak, you had a question.
Yes, so my question was that a lot of these options, and we spoke about what shouldn't be named veganism, but I was just asking that how much of the taste profile are you guys also sacrificing at your end? I'm talking about chefs and even in marketing now, because so much of what is being consumed, whether it's a high profile restaurant or whether it is sort of a fast consuming delivery platform, condensed milk is there, I'm sure. And now you're also pitching for alternatives, which is vegan, almond or soya. How much is the taste profile changing? Because we're also probably sacrificing a lot of that. So what about, purists that want to keep the dish, that don't, if it requires milk, for example, frosting you guys spoke about, we are changing that. How much of the taste profile changes, and, how are people adapting?
See, I think it's a two-way process. It's like how they say, push and pull both. Like in the case of a frosting, non-dairy frosting is so cheap that the adaptation is very, very fast, and thus the investment in the research of non-dairy was so important, and that was so fast. The other side, the customer, some of the customers are demanding vegan stuff or non-dairy stuff, because, so to say, now dairy intolerance is becoming big, or it's a fad. You know, people want to talk about, I'm not dairy intolerant, I'm lactose intolerant, I'm celiac or gluten intolerant. Now it's a two-way process. There will be a change, right? If you drink a coffee with a, let's say simply a cappuccino with a good quality, more than 6% fat milk. That is how the cappuccino was always built, right? Or a latte. Now today people are making latte with a coconut milk. So will there be a change? Yes. But has customer accepted to it? Yes. So it's a choice of a customer, and how he is asking for it or she is asking for it, and also how the industry perceives some of the products, where the other products are so cheap and so convenient that it's actually replacing the natural product, which is the case, say, with a non-dairy cream. Like the soy frosting creams are so cheap, and as a chef, it boils my heart to see a non-dairy cream on a frosting of a pastry, but that's what it is. And there's a lot of research that has happened on it, so it's not that bad, for sure.
I think also, just adding to the non-dairy part, that it's cost effective, and the reason it has become very popular specifically with cakes is by home chefs, because it stabilizes very quickly. So across board, if you see all the home chefs when they are baking and selling cakes, they all use non-dairy, barring if you have to ask them, can you use a buttercream? Because the cost is really low of a non-dairy whipping cream. It's largely palm oil whipped. So there's nothing palm oil, so it's absolutely unhealthy. Yeah, so it's absolutely unhealthy. But when somebody's ordering a birthday cake, I mean, you have to look from lower to larger level. Not everyone can afford a buttercream cake. Would be about 1 kg buttercake cream is about 2,000 rupees plus. Vis-a-vis when you look at a simple 8 kilo regular whipping cream, it starts from $500 last year, $500 to goes on till, depending on the design of the cake. So now average family will all, and उनको फर्क भी नहीं मालूम है. They are never going to ask. The guy will say buttercream or whipping cream. जो सस्ता है वो दे दो.
So the research is so strong now. पता नहीं चलता mostly कि non-dairy cream है, dairy cream है.
But adding to that, Vinayak, when you ask about the receptibility of a non-dairy, cream, or I think a lot of, one of the big things that you see in tier 2 cities, and now even in, villages, is the demand for decorated cakes and pastries. That's huge. And one of the ways we know it is because we work with this organization called Seva, which is one of the largest women cooperative in the world. And they say that, for the women-led kitchens, that they have one of the largest demanders of cakes and pastries. Now, there is a paying capacity that the consumer has. But even if you look at smaller bakeries in cities like Delhi, we have grown up on non-dairy whipping cream, just not knowing what it was. We are more aware today, and we say, oh, I want to make a choice towards butter, or I want to make sure what it is. But what we have grown up towards, in a classic case being the Black Forest decimated, but it was practically that. We have been having either vegetable shortening or palm oil, which has been whipped to stabilize.
The Black Forest that she's talking about was neither chocolate nor dairy.
Yeah. That's why I called it a decimated Black Forest, but yes. But any more questions? Yes, Preeta.
Sorry. Oh. I've been a huge user of condensed milk. I have a question. Can it be made without sugar? Can you get that viscosity and that texture and everything if you make it without sugar?
So that's evap milk.
That is evaporated milk.
Largely, that's evaporated.
So why isn't Nestle doing evaporated milk?
So see, evap milk has different functionality. The moment you remove the sugar from the condensed milk, and it becomes evap milk, the functionality, the end output of a product will change completely. The caramelly notes, the nutty notes, the perceivable milky notes in our minds. So a lot many times as a consumer, when you see a sensory, right, when we look at sensory, as a chef, right? Versus where we do a sensory evaluation with the end consumer who are trained on sensory. The milky note of a Milkmaid or a condensed milk is actually a mix of the Maillard reaction of a sugar in that product with the milk sugars. Now, today, condensed milk industry is so big. In my mind as a chef, I can tell you, evap milk will not be even half as big. I mean, it can't become 1/3, 1/4, 1/6,
See,
1/8.
today, because of this entire health reasons, or for a lot of us, consumption of sugar has come down. You know, when I use Milkmaid, sometimes I do feel I wish it was less sweet, or I wish I could add my own sugar, but still retain,
The
you know,
flavor and the
whatever Milkmaid gives me.
So,
You think such a product
see,
could be made?
it's a brilliant strategy. It's a brilliant thought.
Yeah.
It's a risky thought, though, right? Because remember, the size of the pie is so big for everyone. Forget about Milkmaid. Let's talk about any condensed milk. Any condensed milk that is produced in a country is at par in sugar level. Almost every single brand makes with the same amount of sugar. That is simply because the Indian consumer wants it at that concentration. Now, it's a great thing.
I do too. I'm not denying that I don't. But when I use it nowadays, I get this feeling that, you know, if only I could have the same product with no sugar or less sugar, so then I could control the amount of sweetness, you know, in whatever I'm making. That's the thought that's been coming over, and that's why I asked you the question.
You're 100% right.
You know, I would love to have a product like that.
And you know, there is an evap milk that we get in India. There is an evap milk that Nestle gets, called a brand called Carnation. But it's not doing well.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Preeta Di, what Milkmaid is to India, the way it happened, Nestle did the same thing in South America, and evap milk is equally big.
Equally big.
So they started pushing condensed milk, was the first push across colonies. But gradually at some point of time, they realized that there is a market because they had similar dishes, desserts like that. So they pushed really hard the evap milk there. So what the kind of, what do you call, the percentage or the pie of condensed milk is in India, is South America has
but
that
you
for
get
evap
evap
milk
milk in India. Carnation is available in India. We get it.
Carnation.
Carnation is the name of the
I've never
brand.
used
Yeah,
it.
you
Let
could
me
use it,
and
try
see.
it once.
Carnation is available.
And you'll complain about it, believe me.
On that note, we'll take this to lunch and we'll continue with this. But I think one of the things that, you know, in closing the session, we wanted this session to be also, I think, you know, we look at food from many dimensions, right? And often beyond the obvious, food tells you a story which is about a lot more than what's happening. Here, as we said, you know, it is about policy, it is about marketing, it is about how actually it made an effect at the social level where women started first getting recognized as chefs by a major brand. So this panel, and thank you so much, Ruchi and Dhawal, for your wonderful inputs. As Ruth said, you know, there is probably no one in this room who's never sneaked in a spoonful of condensed milk.